So what most people don't realize, when you reduce your calories by 25%, your hunger actually doubles over 4 months. So it's driving you to eat food. And when we're driven to eat food, we don't always make the right choices. It's not you going, oh, I'm just going to make a bad choice. It is actually your body telling you, go out and eat. And of course, we will consume the easiest thing that is possible. And usually that's a takeout or it's a highly processed food. So yeah, food, well, certainly you don't want to shop when you're really hungry.
All right. Well, it's a real pleasure to have Sarah Kennedy on the show. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Zara. It's great to be here.
So, you started out as a veterinarian, before moving into the nutrition, food, and now the health and wellness space. What inspired you to make this transition?
Yeah, I graduated as a veterinarian and I practiced for about 5 years, both in New Zealand and in London. And when I came back, I wanted to specialize. And really, there was an opening then for an animal nutritionist specializing in aquaculture. So, aquaculture being salmon in New Zealand and shrimps in Noumea, which is a French island in the Pacific. And also, I then became the underwater SeaWorld veterinarian as well. So I then got into nutrition, really not by accident because I wanted to specialize, but that's how it happened. And then I started taking over more and more animal groups and then became general manager of that company. So it kind of went on from there. So you started with animals, but as most people, well, interesting thing about animals, during vet school, we learned so much about nutrition because everything in animals is about nutrition, usually for performance, if it's a horse, or production, if it's let's say it's a cow for milk, and even down to domestic animals. You know how many times people bring in their dogs or cats and go, gosh, you're overweight. How do you do that? So we learned a huge amount of nutrition, and actually far more than most doctors do on their way through training, because it was so integral to performance and production.
That is amazing. And why don't we do this with humans? We're so focused on the performance and the output of an animal, but what about human animals? So, looking back then across your career in this business and nutrition and now entrepreneurship, what do you think is the single biggest lesson that you've learned about food and human health?
Well, we kind of eat. Evolution has taught us to eat, in the fact that our hormones tell us to eat, in the fact that it got us out of caves and out to hunt. So what most people don't realize is, when you reduce your calories by 25%, your hunger actually doubles over 4 months. So it's driving you to eat food. And when we're driven to eat food, we don't always make the right choices. But, it's not you going, oh, I'm just going to make a bad choice. It is actually your body telling you, go out and eat. And of course, we will consume the easiest thing that is possible. And usually that's a takeout or it's a highly processed food. So yeah, food, well, certainly you don't want to shop when you're really hungry.
Yes, don't shop. That's a good lesson. Don't shop when you're hungry. I always make sure I eat because I do tend to spend a lot more money on that shopping cart when I go there and fully hungry. But how interesting, yeah, when you're working with animals, well, we control what they're eating if they're obviously in agriculture. So we give them the food, or if you're in the wild, it's like that. But it's not the same for humans, right? We make poor choices usually because we want what's convenient and what's easy or what's cheap. So from your perspective, what do you think that the humans have gone wrong in their relationship with food?
I'll go back to it again. Animals are the same, but they're more in the natural, in the fact that our evolution was feast and famine. And so our hunger, where everyone blames themselves for lack of willpower, it's not lack of willpower. The fact is that our hunger, our appetite centers are in our hindbrain, and that's what controls us. So when they feel that we're going into starvation, which we're not at all, that drop in calorie, it releases more ghrelin to say to you, go out and eat, go out and eat. And it will continue to do that until you eat. So where we went wrong with food, we haven't really gone wrong with food. In the developed world, and let's call it the developed world, we're surrounded by food. So once what was an asset to us and forcing us to hunt has now become a liability, because that hindbrain is saying to you, oh, you better eat while you've got food. I always find it interesting because I always ask people, so what, you've got this little willpower that sits in your forebrain, and you only need stress, hunger, lack of sleep, alcohol, anything, and that little forebrain falls off and that hindbrain comes out and goes, whoa, let's go eat. And remember, this is to do with calorie intake. And so when you think, oh, I've eaten really well today, and then you might have a few drinks, and you think, oh, well, I'll have some chips. So I always say to people, how many times have you had hot chips late at night when you've had some drinks? And that's that hindbrain, that willpower has gone off, and the little hindbrain said, oh, let's go and have something to eat. You haven't quite had your calories today, or you could eat some more.
It seems like
So
there.
think of evolution, and I always go back to evolution. We think we're so highly adapted, and we are in many ways, but our hindbrain has not adapted. We are still in that. It has not evolved at the rate humans have and their food around them.
Yeah, it seems as we've had a lot of influence in the sense that I don't know how to put this. We have, I guess, the noise that animals in the wild don't have. And we have a lot of triggers, and we have emotions, we have emotional eating, we have menopause, we have sleep deprivation, like you mentioned, and that messes up our ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and our leptin, which is a satiety hormone. They get all wonky. I'm wondering also, there's some people that say when you have low nutrition, you may actually have a lot of food in your stomach, but it's low nutrient dense foods, and that can also trigger more hunger because your body's looking for those nutrients. And then what you do is keep going for the wrong foods.
Wrong foods. Yeah, I think things like protein, you've got to remember your body has to feel full to send those signals. So something like protein will actually form more, say a protein drink, it'll form more of it's more dense. So it'll make you feel fuller because of its density, and obviously it's high nutrition as well. So I always say to people, if you can get nutrition, if you can get protein in, it's both good nutritionally, but it will make you feel fuller. So something like a milk will sit like a curd in your stomach, which is going to make you feel fuller anyway. Eggs are great. Anything that's easy and high in protein, try and reach for if you can. But just remember, your appetite is driven by hormonal signaling. And while we try and put willpower above it, lots of things pull that willpower away.
Speaking of hormones, do you know how the life stages, particularly menopause and these changes in our hormone, does that change the way that we're experiencing food and our cravings and our general health?
Yeah, we often talk about menopause and the fact, I think it's deeply unfair, but because your estrogen has dropped and your metabolism has dropped with it, you actually have to eat 200 calories less a day just to stay the same size. Because that's because your metabolism has dropped because of your estrogen drop. It's all it's all physiologically correct. It's just like you have to eat 200. It always seems so desperately unfair to me. So take it off lunch or take it off dinner or take it off snacking. But at some point, you're going to have to reduce that calorie intake to stay the same size and not put on that peri and postmenopausal weight, which will gather around the abdomen just because of your hormonal changes. Really unfair, isn't it?
It's so unfair. Like you said, 200 calories less per day just to stay the same size. That's not fair.
Like a smallish hamburger.
smallish hamburger. Yeah, yeah. So if you're actually, that's if you want to stay the same size and all the same things are, you're exercising same or not exercising, whatever it is, everything's still staying the same. But during this transition, we can gain up to 22 pounds or 10 kilos. And if you're already up there and you're like, okay, wait a second, now I don't want to stay the same size. I want to lose something. So it's either increasing your exercise, but then we know how that can backfire sometimes by over
Absolutely.
exercising and under eating. And then you get into this, your metabolism just goes, I know I'm not going to be fed, so I'm going to keep slowing down my metabolism.
That's it.
And it's hard to, we got to find that balance, right? Because that formula that used to work in our 20s and 30s is not working so well in our menopause transition in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what you want to do is certainly keep the exercise, but I always say it's strength training, doing that muscle, because you are going to start to get muscle degradation. Well, you do right through from your 30s, but it speeds up. So sarcopenia or muscle a decrease is a really, really big thing with aging. So I always impress on people, it's not about running and it's not about high intensity. It is about strength training. And however you do it, just do that strength training. And then diet is going to be. So what is going to help you? And that will mean eating better, but eating less and snacking less. And that is, but and that's where we come into, that's hard because your brain's telling you to eat all the time and you're trying to cut it down, and that's hard. This is where Calocurb comes in. Just a little bit of background in it. It was developed by the New Zealand government. The project started in 2010. Why is it done by the New Zealand government? All primary research in New Zealand is done by the government, which makes it quite different in the fact that no company, well, let's just say all primary research like this, we have large research institutes that are funded by the government. So a group of very talented scientists belonging to a research institute, which is owned by the government, called Plant and Food Research, had a hypothesis in 2009 that they would find a plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. Now, remember, this was long before Ozempic, long before the Wegovy. This was long. And they had this for a couple of reasons. First was historical. In times of famine, Scottish people chewed very, very bitter berries to suppress appetite. So we knew that. Also in the Kalahari Desert, tribesmen chewed very, very bitter cactus, which is actually the basis for hoodia, to reduce appetite before they went out on long hunting trips. So there was that sort of historical basis. And then there'd been some recent work in rats using bitter substances. So they had this hypothesis. They put in for a grant by the government called Foods for Appetite Control and got $20 million back to explore this. And then they started this incredible a number of pieces of scientific work. The first one was I find fascinating. They actually took 300 biopsies, human biopsies, from right down through the gastrointestinal tract. So I always say it wrong, colonoscopy and enteroscopy. So right down through these 300 biopsies. And they actually showed that not only do we have bitter taste receptors on our tongue, we have them right down through our gastrointestinal tract, these bitter taste receptors called TAS2R. There's actually 25 of them. And then they mapped them right the way through the gastrointestinal tract, showing that we had. And so this was what would influence our appetite. And once again, this is an evolutionary trait. So why would we have bitter taste receptors down through our gastrointestinal tract? It's sort of 300 million years of evolution for both plants and humans. So if you look at a plant or anything, so look at an apple tree. They make the apple very sweet, don't they? So we want to eat them. And of course they do that because they want the seeds to be spread away from the apple tree. So that, and strawberries are the same. Any sort of fruit is the same. They want it to be spread. But the leaves are very bitter because the plant doesn't want you to eat the leaves. It wants you to eat the fruit, which is to spread the seeds. And then so we evolved with bitter taste receptors because bitter could often be associated with toxic. So this was a way of protecting us. So fascinating in the fact if you eat something bitter, you'll spit it out. Your body will be saying to you, don't eat it. If it goes down to your stomach, you'll release more ghrelin, and the ghrelin will tell you to eat more because what it's trying to do is dissipate or trying to dissipate that, trying to reduce anything bitter you've eaten. But if it goes into your upper digestive tract, your duodenum, this is what will stimulate the release of your appetite suppressing hormones. So
Oh, you mean like leptin? Leptin is a appetite.
no, leptin's the secondary one. It stimulates the release of CCK, so cholecystokinin, GLP-1, and PYY. So this was a way to protect plants and to protect humans. Pretty cool, isn't it? Like this is 300 million years. So what they did was they proved that we have these bitter taste receptors right down through. And this was first to the world, so this is published. They proved this. And then they proved that these little bitter taste receptors, which line our enteroendothelial cells and our lining of our gut, release these hormones. So, as I said, stomach will be ghrelin, but lower down than that is all the appetite suppressing hormones. So they then proved that. And then on that, they built a high throughput model using these human cells, and they tested over 1,000 extracts. So all from all sorts. And not surprisingly, not many worked, because if every time we ate something bitter, we stopped eating, you drink a cup of coffee and go, oh, I'm full. Wouldn't that be fantastic? And so didn't, but there were two that did. One was a potato oxalate, which was great, but poisonous. So you'd be thin but dead. So that's no good. And then the second one was hops. So this was a real eureka moment for them. And because they were plant and food research, they've bred most of the hops or all of the hops in New Zealand. So they then tested around 50 different varieties of hops and came out with the one that gave the strongest release of these hormones while still protecting the cells. So this was fantastic. They'd shown this in clinic, they'd shown this in vitro or in the laboratory. But would this work in humans? So that was when it was around 2014. So this had taken 4 years. They took it into their first human clinical trial. So this was 30 healthy men, which they cannulated so they could take bloods at, I think it was 10-minute intervals. And they gave Calocurb an hour before an ad libitum, or eat till you're full lunch and eat till you're full snack. And they did that, and they saw this incredible, they saw from the bloods, they saw this 600% rise in CCK, GLP-1, and a 400% rise in PYY. These are your three main appetite suppressing hormones. And that was 2 times above the placebo level. So the normal when you eat is around 300, because you do release these hormones when you eat, but we were at 600, which was really important because you have to be over 400% to make any behavioral change. Below that, you may drop your blood glucose, but you will not make a behavioral change. It will not be strong enough for you to make a behavioral change. So they did that. And of course, they measured the calorie intake over this ad libitum lunch and ad libitum snack. And we got on average an 18% reduction in calorie intake.
Wow.
So I'm just going
if
to
you're
give you a
saying a
comparison.
2,000 calorie diet, then that's
Around about 230
almost
calories.
200, calories down.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. And if you want a comparison to a semaglutide or Ozempic, that on average reduces your calorie intake around 25% per day.
Oh,
So
oh
24,
wow.
25. So we're 18. So that was given an hour before an ad libitum lunch and an ad libitum snack.
Mhm.
So once again, it works in an hour. It raises CCK, which is an important appetite suppressing hormone, a really good one as well, because it actually helps the gallbladder to express. And often the gallbladder gets very lazy when you're on a semaglutide because of your stomach stasis. So it squeezes that. GLP-1, which we all know, is the one that we all talk about. And then latterly PYY, which is just third. So what actually happens is this extract goes down, or Calocurb goes down. It releases it goes past the stomach because it's in a delayed release cap. It opens in the upper duodenum or the upper gut. It firstly stimulates CCK. Then, as it moves down, because these are different, it stimulates GLP-1. It keeps stimulating GLP-1, and then it stimulates PYY in the lower gut. Now, if many people will say, well, that's great, you're stimulating the natural GLP-1, but hey, Sarah, these only last for 2 minutes in the system. This is why you take a synthetic hormone, or this is why you inject yourself, which has been modified so it lasts for 7 days. But your own natural only lasts for 2 minutes. But remember, we're going down this intestinal tract. I try and relate it to a bit like a pinball going down. It's knocking all of these little, well, it's brushing up against all these little cells and lighting them up and releasing, continually releasing these hormones. And we know from further clinical trials that it lasts for 4 to 6 hours. So it's not just a, whoa, it happens. It lasts for 4 to 6 hours after you've taken the capsule. So they did this incredible work. And remember, doing a clinical like that costs probably about $800 million
Wow.
because it's ethics, it's double blind, it's placebo. You've got to cannulate people. It's an expensive clinical trial. So in around 2017, that's when I was approached, and that was because of my background being in nutrition and in human nutrition, or latterly in human nutrition. They're like, well, hey, what would you do with this extract? And remember, it didn't even have a name then. Well, it did have a name. It had a name that the scientists called it, the extract called amaracate. Now, never let a scientist name something. They were so excited because it's Latin, amara meaning bitter and sate meaning satiation,
Ah,
amaracate. But
yeah.
no one can pronounce it. So anyway, they were very excited and they approached me and said, hey, what would you do? And I'd never seen this amount of science behind a product with these results ever, with this bigger category that
Yeah.
we could own from source to shelf. Now, remember, I keep saying this is long before Wegovy and Ozempic. So we didn't just get on this GLP-1 bandwagon. This started in 2010. Anyway, I loved it so much. I said, I want it. So, really compressing up 7 years, I formed the company, formed a team, and raised the money to launch what we then named Calocurb, which is calorie and then curb. People say, well, why did you call it that? Well, it's quite hard to find a name that you can trademark globally.
Oh,
Anyway, we could with that. So that's why we have Calocurb now. So I started that and we launched in 2018. So, yeah, that's a bit of the background. And since then, we've done 3 more human clinical trials.
that's what I love is the human clinical trials too. This is not just mice or monkeys that are showing these results. And certainly Calocurb is a lot easier than saying Amarasate, or at least
I
easier
know.
to remember. So you jumped a little to the gun to Calocurb. And so I heard what you're saying is that there these were scientific studies that were being done anyways by the government in these universities, and a lot of universities, like you mentioned to me earlier, like that in New Zealand, you get a lot of support just for discoveries. And so I hear then that they found out that they tested all these bitter extracts because they were looking for something that would suppress the appetite. And eventually they found out that CCK, GLP-1, and PYY, which are much more powerful, or I guess pre the leptin that we always talk about. And that's just one hormone, but evidently these are much more potent appetite regulators. And what I also heard was that just using, it was, you had 300% appetite suppression with just eating food. But with Calocurb or amorosate, is that magic ingredient, it suppresses it by 600. I mean, it changes the hormone by
Twice.
600%, right?
Yeah,
One of them.
because just have a think about it. So when we eat, about 45 minutes later, we go, oh, I'm full. Sometimes you wait to eating too much. And that's your own natural gut brain access going, hey, you can stop eating now. And that's because it's stimulated the release of your own natural hormones. Remember, it's gone to your stomach, it started to digest, and it's gone into your upper gut. And that's when they're released, which is about 45 minutes, an hour later. And that goes back up to your brain and says, hey, you're full, stop eating. We just do it earlier because remember, we give it an hour before a main meal. So we're stimulating it earlier. We're not waiting for that. And that's really the point. We are working with your natural hormone release. We're just super stimulating it. So think of, I'm just super stimulating your gut brain access to tell you you're full earlier. Because we often, how your mother used to say, chew 10 times before you swallow and all of that. And it was to make you eat slower. We as humans tend to eat very fast. So we eat a lot, and we're not getting that signaling to our brain till at least 45 to an hour later. Hey, you could have eaten 10 donuts in that time. I often look at the size of people's meals and how they eat quite fast, and they're not going to get a signal to their brain until they've eaten too much. So what we're doing is signaling the brain and saying, hey, you're full. So you just get full faster. I tell you, the first time I tried it was in 2017, and I had some of the test capsules because they'd approached me, and I was out for dinner with a group of girlfriends, and really interesting, I was handing around these capsules a bit like this drug dealer at the table. Everyone's like, give me some, give me some. Anyway, being New Zealand, we had this leg of slow roasted lamb that we were sharing. And anyway, we'd finished eating. And you know how I would normally pick at the crunchy bits or something. I'd be foolish, but I'd be still picking. I sat back and I thought, I'm full. I'm really full. And it was just, for the first time, I just was like, no, I'm good. So that was my first, yeah. And it's a subtle feeling, but yeah, you're just like, wow, that's good. I'm good. I can walk away now.
I love that. So when people talk about the GLP-1s is what we're talking about most of the time, these weight loss peptides like Ozempic or Wegovy. And what I'm hearing is, of course, there's people who say, oh, you do it in microdosage, it reduces inflammation, does all these fabulous things. But the main thing that I'm hearing is that people are saying, I just don't have to I feel more satiated. I'm eating less. So people, and then that's why we all worry about losing muscle and all these things that can happen. And then I think there's people who are just jumping on it, fine, they're happy, great. And then there are people who say, gosh, I'm not ready to inject myself. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the long term is, or I don't have enough money, or whatever it is. So I'm always looking for alternatives. What else can people do? And so I found that Calocurb, I was so excited to find this because I thought this is it's sort of doing the same main trigger as let's reduce our caloric intake. But yet I like that fact that you said 25% of appetite is suppressed with a GLP-1 or with a peptide, and only 18% with Calocurb, because The problem that we're seeing is that it seems to be that people are getting these high dosages and their appetite's being suppressed too much. And that's again, then I'm battling a whole other problem with our community. Okay, ladies, we gotta like eat, like force yourself to eat. Tell you eat protein like it's your job. It's hard enough as it is when you have a normal appetite, but when you don't have that appetite, then that's a problem. So in fact, I like the fact that it doesn't suppress it as much, or and it seems to be more regulating. It's a more natural thing. It seems this is a plant. Not that plants can be powerful, they can be harmful too, but this is a plant obviously has been studied for a while. It is hops. Is and hops like it reminds me of beer, right? Isn't that what they
Well,
use to make beer?
no, hops are added to beer as a bittering component and as an antioxidant or as a stabilizer for beer. So they go into beer, and that's why you get a hoppy beer, which is more bitter. But and then people will say to me, "Oh, but hops have estrogenic properties." Ours is an extract. We take the hops and we extract it using supercritical CO2 supercritical extraction. So we're only left with the alpha and beta acids and a small amount of essential oils. So you only have the active ingredients. You don't have any phytoestrogens in it whatsoever. So the other thing is it's incredibly safe because we act on the gastrointestinal system. So we're going down, and that's where we want it to be. We want it to be hitting these TAS2R bitter tasters. Think of this pinball machine as it goes down. We don't want it to be absorbed, and less than 1% is absorbed in the blood. So it's not affecting your kidney and it's not affecting your liver at all. So we know that because we've done human bioavailability trials. So it's just in your intestine and it's degraded within 20 hours in your colon. So very, very safe like that. Safe with other drugs because we're literally not interacting with any drugs. We're not interacting with drug metabolism through the liver. Almost too good to be true, but remember, the government funded this because we have an obesity problem as well in New Zealand, and they funded this to find a safe, effective, and affordable. We call it an alternative, but it wasn't an alternative when they did it. It was just a safe and effective, affordable mechanism to suppress appetite. And the thing is that when you inject yourself, it is a synthetic hormone, and that synthetic hormone looks very like your natural GLP-1. We talked about your own GLP-1, but it's had a molecule change, so it lasts for 7 days. So you've got high GLP-1 in your body, like when you're asleep. You don't need high GLP-1 when you're asleep. You need high GLP-1 when you eat to suppress your appetite or before you eat. And that's what Calocurb does. Remember, we work with the circadian, we work with the rhythm of the body. Like, so you go up 300%, we go up 600%. It works with the body and lasts for about 4 to 6 hours, which is why we say take it an hour or an hour and a half before lunch and before dinner. And always try and take it on a semi-empty stomach if you can, because we want it, because it's in a delayed release cap, you want it to move past the stomach, it moves past the stomach into the upper intestinal tract.
I'm assuming this is gluten-free and glyphosate-free, and we don't have to,
Yes,
somebody's
all
celiac, they
tested.
can take this, right?
Yeah, glyphosate-free, glucose, vegetarian, it's everything. Vegan, vegetarian, glyphosate is actually organic too, where we actually grow it because it is a specific hop. It's not all hops, right? It is a specific hop we grow in New Zealand in one of the most beautiful places. It's in the top of the South Island called Motueka. So get out your phone and have a look at Motueka. It almost has this microclimate. And that farm itself is organic.
Oh, I like that. We keep talking about appetite suppressant, and we have to be careful. Sometimes, we don't want it to be suppressed too much. And what I think I like about taking something like Calocurb as opposed to injecting yourself, because that's 7 days, you're not going to feel hunger, that we could perhaps use Calocurb in when we need it. Like if you're training hard and you need your appetite to be there, like we don't want to suppress that. We want to be eating and want to have those signals. So I'm wondering, is Calocurb can it be considered more like an appetite management and regulate the
Oh,
appetite, or is it just
absolutely.
purely
You can
suppressing?
come in and out of it because remember it works in an hour. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to build up. So this is a wonderful thing. I take mine in the morning because I actually intermittent fast because I just find it easy. And that'll see me through lunch. And maybe I'll take one at 3 or 4 o'clock if I'm going to eat later. But if I'm going out to a really nice dinner, say I'm going out to a degustation dinner, I'm not going to take my Calocurb. I want to eat it. But if I'm on holiday, a holiday season, and I know I'm just going to be surrounded by beautiful food all the time, I still want to eat. I just don't want to eat too much. I don't want to put on those pounds during the holiday season. We've had so many people come back to us and say, oh my God, I went on this 10-day cruise and I've put on no weight. It's fantastic. I haven't put on any weight over the holiday season. So, yes, use it as you need it.
Yeah.
And remember, I intermittent fast, so I take mine in the morning. So I'll go through to lunchtime. The wonderful thing about it, you can come in and out of it.
Mhm.
When you first take it, though, we do have an onboarding, which is 1 per day for 2 days, 2 per day for 2 days, and then up to two, then you get up to your main dose, which is 2. And it's just getting your body used to that super stimulation or that additional GLP-1 that you're going to have. But it's all natural, as I said, all a natural release. And then once you know how your body reacts, like around about 5% of people will get a laxative effect. And that goes. They may be the lucky ones that stay on one capsule. They may not need 2 capsules. They're little capsules. They may not need it. And that means, well, we often, as we say, it's probably because they have more bitter taste receptors in the enteroendothelial. And we always say you would have survived when we were evolving in the prehistoric times because you would have, or they've got a very good gut-brain access. But that's why we have an onboarding. But once you know how it works with you, yeah, you can take it intermittently how you want, but start on it to understand your body's reaction because we're all different. And as I said, 5% of people will get a laxative effect. Some people don't mind the laxative effect.
Yeah, I tested it on a few with a few friends of mine, and I wanted to try it too. I was like, does this really work? Does this really take away your appetite? And so for me, my cues are pretty good. I'm training again, and I'm really like to be. I have those cues on. I took it over the weekend when I wasn't training, and I thought, okay, let's test this out. And so I noticed that when I was doing a blood glucose monitor before I found Calocurb, I am someone who snacks a little bit too much if I'm working and just it's just like that. I don't know, snacking. And I'm eating a lot of food. I mean, I'm good. It's
You're
just more,
highly active. Yeah.
yeah. So I just thought, okay. But it's not good for the blood glucose to be constantly up and down. So I said, okay, this will be a great thing for me to see if I can regulate that. And it's more, for me, it's more like just boredom type
Yeah.
eating. So I think it was really great for that because you don't think about it. And so what a lot of people say about those weight loss peptides is that it takes away food noise. And I think you're seeing those results too, right? And that's what some of my friends saw
Absolutely.
as well. They were using it a bit longer term than me, but they also felt satiated. Yeah, they felt like it was definitely
And
working, but
takes
the food
our
noise is
biggest
interesting.
our biggest comment back is you take the noise out of my head. You
Mhm.
take the noise. And what I love is taken before dinner, and because remember it lasts for that 4 to 6 hours. People don't snack after dinner. You know how people normally have dinner and they're like, oh, I'll get whether it's savory or sweet. They don't snack. Now, why we say the craving and the hunger is, as we said, we did, or the government did, 2 more human clinicals on hunger and craving. And we did one in males, and we showed an 80% decrease in increased hunger because we gave Calocurb in the last 8 hours of a 24-hour water only fast, which is when you're the hungriest. And we gave it at 16 hours and 20 hours. So they had 80 compared to placebo or non-treated people, they had 80% less hunger. And that's all mapped out. So that was amazing. And then we repeated it in females. Now, that was really interesting. I was a bit grumpy about that because it was another 250,000 and I did it for my Australian regulations. It's very tough in Australia, and they're like, fine, you show appetite suppression in males, but you haven't shown it in females. So on your label, you can only put males. And I'm like, well, it's the same physiology. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter. So I repeated it in females, and I was so happy we did it. But with females, only around 25 to 30% of clinical trials have done on females. And that's because of our hormones and our cycling hormones with menstrual cycles. So we had to get, well, not we, the scientists had to get women on the same day of their menstrual cycle,
Oh, wow. Interesting.
on the same day of the week, 3 times. So, because you have the same group of women and you give them placebo, high dose, low dose, right? So 30 women 3 times on the same day of the week, on the same day of their menstrual cycle.
Wow.
So this
Love
took
it.
about, where men took about maybe 6 weeks to do, women took about, I think it was about 13 months to do. This
Wow.
was during COVID.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm so glad we did, because the results in women were stunning. And people are not quite sure why women are more receptive to GLP-1. But we got 100% decrease in increased hunger. So they were no more hungry at 24 hours than they were at 16 hours. Remember, that's the last 8 hours of a 24-hour fast. And we got 120% decrease in craving. So they were craving less at 24 hours, and this was of sweet things, than they were at 16 hours.
This is
We,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, we did a rebound eating as well at the end of that 24 hours, and they were ate 14.5% less. And remember, that was 4 hours after their last dosage. So incredible results. So I was, after being very grumpy to start with, I was absolutely delighted that we'd done that. And about 60% of our consumers are women, about 40% males. Remember, they have the same hunger and all the rest as us. They tend to put it out the front and bellies. And it really, in fact, I just bumped into, I live in an apartment, and I just bumped into one of our residents here, a big, tall, 6'6" guy. He's a government lobbyist. And he came up to me and he said, oh, hi. And he goes, can you notice a difference in me? And I'm like, you look good. And he's like, no, I've lost 10 kgs. And I'm like, oh, that's great, Phil. And he goes, that Calocurb really works. And I'm like, of course it works, Phil. I've had 3 human clinicals and all the rest. And he goes, but don't I look good? So it works just as well with men. And he's a 6'6" tall man, always traveling around the world for government things. And anyway, so yeah, it works just as well for men as well.
I'm glad you did those trials because, yeah, women with their hormones and with menopause, and we're all over the place. And so it is important to do those studies and to maybe see that maybe it's more important to take Calocurb during the week before your period or during
Oh,
pause or
absolutely.
when things are a little tougher. And you mentioned fasting, and anyone who follows me, they know in general, I'm not a huge fan of this intermittent fasting because I see that a lot of women in my community are just fasting too much, too long, and exercising way too hard and trying everything so hard. So I was trying to like keep it cool it on the intermittent fasting. But I myself, as I'm active, I don't do too much either. I actually try not to intermittent fast because sometimes it's a little natural for me. But I am a fan of fasting, a bit the longer fast for therapeutic reasons. I would tend to do it a couple of times a year just for make a 48-hour fast to just activate autophagy and all that. I just don't want to doing this every day. And it's hard. I don't like fasting. I like to eat and I eat a lot and I eat 3 times a day. I'm packing it in. But during those fasts, I can't wait to try Calocurb
Yeah,
because
fantastic for that.
I mean, I can do it, I can push myself through it, but it's no fun. But I'm
No,
excited to get Calocurb on board just to make it a little smoother and I could focus on my work and do other things. But yeah.
you'll love it for that. I only do 10-6, and the reason, oh, 16-8, 16-8 I do. And the reason for that is I'm lazy because I know the protein I need to get, I know all of that, but I just miss that calorie in the morning and then it just helps me. But that's just because I'm lazy, and it's no other reason than that. And I've kind of got into the habit. But I struggled. Why do you found a company? Why do you do this? Because it's not easy. We've been on high growth mode, which is fantastic, but you are working and balancing the whole time. But ever since I was young, I've had this love-hate relationship with food, yo-yo dieting, binging, love-hate, love food, but hate it,
Mhm.
eat too much, hate it, all of these things. And when this came along and when I trialed it, I can say I'm at peace with food. I know I can eat anything. I just don't need to eat as much.
Mhm.
And so to quieten that constant, I'd really like to eat that. Oh, I shouldn't eat that. When will I going to eat that? What can I do? And so it's quietening that noise, and it's made my relationship with food just so much healthier. So for anything else, I'm just delighted. And a Calocurb, they used to say gin was mummy's little helper. I say Calocurb's mummy's little helper.
So I'm wondering, is there anyone who shouldn't be taking Calocurb or
Don't even
Amerisate or hops?
those are those bloody scientists, but you will laugh because we're in Wikipedia. Amerisate is now in Wikipedia, and that's all they ever wanted was to see their extract in Wikipedia. And it's like, now you've had it, now you've had it. And they go, don't it, doesn't it look great? Amara for bitter and sate for satiation. Just say Calocurb.
Yeah.
And so when they shouldn't, look, it's very, very safe. We do say if people have IBD or an inflammatory bowel, if they've got some inflammation in their gastrointestinal tract, probably better not to, because you are triggering little bit of taste receptors. Your gut's inflamed anyway, so probably not. So that's about it. It's very safe. A lot of practitioners are using it in conjunction with GLP-1s, synthetic GLP-1s. The reason being they can reduce the dosage, not microdose, but they can reduce the dosage and reduce the side effects and reduce the cost. And that what that does is you're stimulating your natural GLP-1 as well as having synthetic GLP-1. And it really helps in that breakthrough hunger people get in about day 5 as the injection starts to wear off. So in combination, the other way, I say it's not an if, it's a must. If people are coming off GLP-1 injections, what most people don't realize is they've suppressed their GLP-1 to almost zero, their natural GLP-1 to almost zero. Of course they are. Whenever you take an external hormone, you suppress your natural hormone to almost zero. Your hormones go, hey, I don't need to do anything. I'm going on holiday. It happens with testosterone. It happens with many synthetic hormones. So when people come off, when they're titrated off, of course their hunger is just out of this world because they've got no stop button. The GLP-1's been suppressed to zero, and we just don't know for how long. So we're doing further trialing now. We're taking bloods on a number of people to see how long that natural GLP-1 is suppressed for. We know it's suppressed. That's all clinically published, but we just don't know for how long. So absolutely, if you're titrating off, go on to Calocurb at the same time.
Mhm. Well, hopefully, this is the problem. It seems most people that I'm speaking with in who are taking these things are not learning how to eat, how to suppress it
Yeah,
naturally with protein or with enough fiber or
absolutely.
and That's the work that needs to be done. Well, at least somebody who's getting good guidance with these weight loss peptides with a proper practitioner, they should be getting this guidance so that eventually you get off of it. And during this time, you've learned how to eat and exercise and do what you need to do. But on the way, I think Calocurb, that's another great point, is something, yeah, as you're weaning off of it, if you're nervous, what just take Calocurb and see what happens
You
because
will get a rebound hunger, which is out of this world. And what we're starting to see is this long-term yo-yo dieting. Go on GLP-1, lose this weight, gain it, go back on. And of course, every time you go back on, you've lost more muscle mass. So you haven't got a great body, you haven't got that composition.
Mhm.
We say we are a tool in the toolkit. We are not the whole toolkit. You have to do it alongside diet. As I said, protein, do it alongside. We're just going to help you do it. You're going to be able to make better choices because you're just not going to be ravenous. So alongside that, strength training, all of those things, we're there to help that along the way.
I guess one person who shouldn't be taking this are people who have anorexia or have eating
Oh,
disorders.
absolutely. It tends to be a different type of disease. That's a real mind. It's a control. It's a number of things. But yeah, anyone with an eating disorder, I would say no.
Yeah. And maybe pregnancy as well. I don't know if
I
you have
wouldn't
that in
take
a
it in
bottle.
pregnancy. I
Yeah.
mean, A, we've never tested it, and B, we probably never would test it because almost nothing is tested. Nothing's tested in pregnant women, and you want those calories as well. Certainly, pre-pregnancy, the trouble with using GLP-1 pre-pregnancy is you have to be off it for about 6 weeks
Mm,
before you try and conceive again. Where Calocurb, you can be off for 24 hours,
mm.
and because it's degraded and out of your system.
One question, how in your studies, I guess, and as well as the feedback you get, how long if somebody's using Calocurb to lose weight and lose fat, let's say, how long does it take before they see some results?
Well, you're eating, say, an average of 18 to 20% less per day. So you'll start to see results after a week. However, I'm going to be able to definitively answer that. We've just finished our fourth human clinical, and this has taken 2 years. 150 patients, men and women, BMI between 25 and 35, on Calocurb or placebo and on Calocurb for 6 months with a 3-month follow-up. So we've taken weight, body, I keep saying we, it's scientists, it's completely independent, but they've taken weight, body composition, bloods, they've taken a number of biomarkers. So I'm very excited about that. It's cost us $2 million. It's just finished. It's been analysed now, and it'll be unblinded by the end of October, early November. So you can see I'm so excited because it's actually getting closer. It's been 2 years. We raised this money in 2023 to do this human clinical. So it's been 2 years in the making. So all double blinded, ethics, everything like that. So I'll be able to then give you the definitive weight loss after that. But what I'm very excited about is the body composition as well. And that's all with DEXA scans, so measuring your muscle and fat composition.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because when we think of, we've been talking so much about losing weight, but that's just one little part of the whole picture. And I'd love to know, as a result of losing excess body fat and perhaps gaining more muscle, you're getting a lot of other benefits, lowering the risk of a lot of diseases. But it would be interesting to see what the
I
trials.
can't wait. I know, I can't wait. 2 years in the making. It will be unblinded late October, early November.
Mm. So is Calocurb available worldwide? Can we get it in any country?
No, at the moment we sell New Zealand, Australia. We sell New Zealand, Australia, America, registering in Canada, Japan, and China. And we've just started in the UK. We sell through a company called Newman, who offer Calocurb. They're telehealth, but they offer Calocurb as an alternative or coming off the GLP-1. So you get great advice with Newman as well. That's in the new UK.
And is the price the same worldwide? Does it change per country?
Well, it's all sort of line priced with America So in America, it's 89.99 for a month.
And that's,
So
yeah, but you said sometimes you take two capsules, sometimes you take it three times or two times. It's once a day. How?
it's once a month. So the bottle is for a month. It's 90 capsules. And we always find that's enough always for a month. In fact, if anything, most of our people come back and say why they've stopped their subscriptions for a while. They say, oh, I've got enough capsules. So it's just as you're saying, people going a little bit of a cheat day, because you can have a cheat day. I'm going out for a nice meal, those types of things. So 90 capsules is always enough for a month.
Yeah, or even more. It depends how you're using it, right? And I think that it'd be interesting. I can't wait to get the feedback if from everybody else. And you've got a promo code. It's 10% off with the code Zora. And I have a link to that in the show notes. And it's just calocurb.com/Zora. And I love that you have a 30-day back guarantee,
Yeah,
right?
money back guarantee. Yeah, look, we have 4 values in our company. The first one is science led. Everything we do is science led. And I say that in the fact for 2 reasons. Everything we do is approved by our regulatory consultants. And B, the technology is still owned by the government. So I have the worldwide license, but it's owned by the government. So I've got to do everything properly because the technology is owned by the government. Our second value is customer success. So unless customers are successful, we're not going to be successful. So we always have help on. So we always have, you can go hello at Calocurb and you can always get help through that. And then the other one is, yeah, if it doesn't work for you or you're disappointed, it's a 30-day money back guarantee.
That's great. That's long enough to see if it does
Oh,
something for you or not.
absolutely,
Look at
particularly
that.
because when it works in an hour. But, I always say, remember to do that onboarding for a week or 5 days. Just important to see how your body is. And then the second thing is try and take it on an empty stomach or a semi-empty stomach, and try and think of things that remind you, like if it's an hour or an hour and a half before lunch. Most of us have a cup of coffee at about mid-morning. Think of it then. In the afternoon, like about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, when you're thinking, oh, I just need a pick-me-up, have a Calocurb. That's going to help you. That's going to save you. So instead of having that sweet chocolate or something like that, have a Calocurb. So try and remember. People put timers on their phones, but I just always, and it doesn't have to be an exact hour. It's just getting it at least an hour and a half before that main meal.
That's so cool. I'm so glad we have this alternative and you're sharing it with the world. Is there any advice that you would leave women with? The woman who's going through menopause and is just struggling, what would you tell her?
I think make it easy on yourself, which is using things like Calocurb and other things. Make it easy to go through that transition. It is just normal. We all go through it. Just look after yourself, pamper yourself, do that strength training. I just cannot emphasize how important that is to keep up that muscle density. And it doesn't have to be really heavy weights. It's just repetition with some weights, and just enjoy that process of stretching and limbering out with that. And of course, eat protein. And I can't say that enough as well. Eggs. And if you don't like eggs and things like that, just get a protein drink. At least you'll be getting in 30 grams, and 30 grams will help. You got to have that alongside your strength training. Otherwise, you're not going to be doing anything. And it's going to be giving you part of that satiation as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the muscles need to be fed if you want them to
Uh,
grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing people always ask me is, well, what's our come off Calocurb? Will it be like the GLP-1 injections where I get this rebound hunger? Well, no. What our scientists think is that we actually help reconnect that gut-brain axis. So by stimulating these bitter taste receptors, we're kind of exercising them. Think of like little exercising the cells. So we are reconnecting that gut brain axis, which for many people is not that strong because over the years of what we've eaten. But once this trial is unblinded, I'll be able to also give you that definitively.
Oh, well, they're going to have you back.
No, I'd love to. I'd love to talk about that.
Oh, Sarah, it's been so interesting speaking with you, and I'm so grateful that we now have some alternatives for the ladies who just don't want to inject themselves, or if they are,
Absolutely.
you've got Calocurb who's got you back, and you'll have a great smooth transition. So, thank you so much, and thank everyone who's made it to the end of this podcast, who found it interesting and hanging on to every word and what you can do. And if you have tried it or you will try it, please give your feedback to us. I'd love to hear more. So. Thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for being here.